No matter how prepared I am, I'm never prepared, it seems. But anyway, here we are for another fantastic episode of Comic Art Convo. I'm really excited about today because we get to talk about not my Nebraska Cornhuskers losing yet another game, but about Alfred Hitchcock, perhaps, arguably, the greatest director of all time. We will discuss that and some of his best films, but let me bring in my accomplice for this wonderful show, James, also known as Sequential Treasure. Oh, look at this. He is he's giving us his, is that your profile? Your Hitchcock profile?
That's right. Come on, if we're going to do Hitchcock, you got to go.
I guess I should have. I got my bald head, right? I could have done that too. I didn't even think about it. How about that? That was very clever. You're right. You're right on top of things, James, as always. And as you're telling us in your little screenshot there, you are the master of pretense. As opposed to suspense.
Hitchcock is the master of suspense.
That's right. Well,
the reason we're doing Hitchcock, folks, is some of you may or may not know this month was his 123rd birthday. So this is all in tribute to the master.
He's not still alive, is he?
No.
Okay, good. Getting old. His 123rd birthday, and he's still going strong.
That would be pretty amazing if he was still here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, folks. We couldn't actually get Hitchcock here on the show. I tried to do a Jason Voorhees and resuscitate the corpse, but it just didn't work out. He can't be here, folks. I'm sorry.
No, well, we tried, but let's see who is here, James. We have Leg Kick, because Leg Kick, of course, is almost always here. Oh, this is nice. See, these guys are trying to get blown up. I only do that on the Sunday show. I'm very well mannered on this show. So I'm not going to blow you up, but I will remember it for tomorrow. Let's see. Kevin Thomas is here. Wants to know if we're going to be discussing Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And
no, not the TV series. We're going to be talking about the films that he did. That's where we're focusing on the films. Perhaps for next year, we'll do how Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Maybe we'll do that for next year.
I'd have to go back and watch a lot of episodes. It's been a long time since I watched any of those. Marcus Killigrew's here. Past Master Dan, of course. Eric the Guapo is here. H is for Heretic. He says, my first Hitch film was Family Plot. Unpopular opinion. I still love it. That was his last film. It was your first film and his last film. So Aaron holds a grudge, Lopresti. It is true. I'm like an elephant. I never forget. All right. Well, here we are.
I'm never forgetting, though. Can you share my screen? There was a little bit of business we needed to deal with before.
Wait a minute. You didn't. There's nothing showing here for me to share. Did you share it for me?
Okay, hold on here. Let me see on mine.
You have to share it with me first, and then I can share it with them.
Yeah, let me go. Share screen.
It's all about technology, folks, and understanding how to use your computer.
Don't mind us, folks. We're just boomers.
That's right. James,
there we go.
There it is. All right. I will add this to. Okay, now got it. Here we go.
Now, Aaron told a story earlier this month about a Jean Grey commission he did of her in the Atlantis Attacks outfit. Yes. And I just wanted to do this. We all gave him a lot of jazz for the story, for what he did, how he tore into the guy because he didn't do it exactly the way the guy had it in his head. So here we are. Here's Jean Grey, Atlantis Attacks, with, look at that, pointy seashells. So you can take some solace, Aaron. You are not the only one to think this way.
Well, that is clearly not the outfit she was wearing in the comic either. So this fits right into what I said. This is artistic interpretation. You have to let your artist breathe a little bit. You can't be so rigid that everything has to that you're art directing them. You know what I mean? So thank you for that, James. I feel better now. I feel better about myself.
And there you go. And of course, I'm sure you got more for yours than this guy did for this one. So
a little bit more. So, anyway, there we go.
I just figured since we started the month with you getting reamed about it, let's end the month with you getting some consideration of no, he wasn't really all that wrong, folks. When
I wasn't
super specific. You need to specify to the artist. Otherwise, there is artistic interpretation involved.
That's right. And you've got to be willing to let that artist breathe just a little bit. So there you have it. Okay.
Artists breathe. Let's talk about the real artist that we're here to talk about, the master himself, Alfred Hitchcock.
I've been a Hitchcock fan since very young, and I still think he's, if not the best director, certainly one of the top 5 of all time. I mean, just a brilliant director, maybe not the best person in the world, but when you pull back the sheets of Hollywood, oftentimes stuff is revealed that you wish you didn't know about many of our favorite stars and actors and producers and directors. So I that's a given to me, that you're not going to be dealing with high character people for the most part. So you just kind of look at their art and say,
well, just even in the industry you're in, Aaron, we all know creative people are very temperamental. That's just how they are.
Some of them very strange indeed. Yes. So, all right. So what we've done here is we've each picked out 5 of our favorite Hitchcock films, and then we'll discuss those. And I have some questions for you. So why don't we just get going with your first pick, shall we?
Let's roll.
All right.
I have to be a boomer and share. Action.
Yeah. And action. All right, here we go. The Trouble with Harry. So this would be like number 5 out of your top 5.
1955, yep. And I like this because it's not the usual thing you expect from Hitchcock. You only think like drama or maybe even a little bit of horror. You think like very suspenseful and lots of, intense stuff in the story, whereas this one is more of a dark comedy, and it's it's very much outside the norm of what people usually think of when they think Alfred Hitchcock. And that's why I like about it is he did so well. To me, it's his view of like rural society, like small town living, and the interactions between the people when something unusual happens in that supposedly idyllic life of a small town. And the story, in case you guys don't know the story of this is there's a guy named Harry who is dead at the start of the film. And through a bunch of contrivances, people come across his body, and there's all this crazy stuff that happens, and it becomes like almost like a comedy of errors, because the captain, played by what's his name?
Was either Forsythe or
Edmund Gwynn. Who plays the captain. He thinks he has killed Harry by accident, but it turns out later they found out that no, he didn't. And now the thing is, they got this body on their hands, and him and all the people who get involved all try to figure out what are they going to do with this dead body that's just here, and we don't know what to do with it. And between trying to figure out what to do with the body, get around the deputy that's trying to find out what's going on. It's, like I said, just a bunch of comedy of errors and just all kinds of like personal interactions and things that come to the surface that we didn't know about these people. Like on the surface they look like they're one thing, but then deep down there's something else. That's a very big much theme in most of Hitchcock's films. Is he kind of, like you said, he pulls back that curtain. There's the way people show themselves, and then there's how they really are, and that's kind of what The Trouble with Harry kind of gets into a lot. And it's got some great actors, John Forsythe, Shirley MacLaine, and probably one of her earliest roles. Very young looking Shirley MacLaine. You wouldn't even probably recognize her. Lots of Royal Dano as the sheriff. He's just the country bumpkin type sheriff. And of course Jerry Mathers as the Beaver. Oh no, wait, this is before that. This is probably what got him the job as the Beaver. But yes,
well, this movie is always one of my favorite trivia questions, because I'll ask people in the movie The Trouble with Harry, what's the trouble with Harry? And of course, the answer is he's dead. Now, and going along with the black humor of this, there's a great shot right there that you included.
Yeah, I just, where else are you ever going to see a very young Jerry Mathers holding a gun over a dead guy? I mean, come on.
You didn't see this and Leave It to Beaver, I can tell you that.
No, this did not happen in that show. No.
And the interesting thing about
his expression here too is just perfect.
Yeah. The interesting thing about this film for me is I have not seen this in ages, so my memory of it is very, very hazy. But I always found this interesting because, especially during this period of time, which we'll see as we go down our list, that Hitchcock was using like Cary Grant, Jimmy Stewart,
Oh yeah.
And this one was what, 1955, right?
55. Yep.
And so it was right in the middle of that. And you've got, Edmund Gwynn, of course, who played Santa Claus in the Miracle on 34th Street.
Yeah. And
John
Forsythe, huge body of work from John Forsythe.
But this is very early in his career. He ended up, of course, he was Charlie in Charlie's Angels, the television show.
That's his biggest thing, yes. And then, of course, Shirley MacLaine, like I said.
Introducing Shirley MacLaine.
First work. I mean, like you almost wouldn't recognize her. She's so young in this.
Well, and it's amazing that he, working with such huge stars as he was at that period of time, that he would come in with a film like this that really didn't have anybody that was a box office draw, right in the middle of the period of time when he was doing some of his best work. I just find it interesting that it's but
it's just funny. It's like all the people in there, nobody you said was a huge star, except for maybe Edward Gwynn because of the Miracle on 34th Street. He might have been the biggest name in the film.
Right.
But no one was really a star. And yet now when you look back at it, it's now a star-studded film. It's like, oh, it's Jerry Mathers and it's William Forsythe and it's Shirley MacLaine and all the big stars.
Exactly. But it didn't start out that way. So that was I find that interesting in the casting at that period of time. But I think Hitchcock I think he respected obviously good actors because he used them quite a bit. But I think he also sort of felt like he was the guy that made the films, and he could put whoever he wanted in there and make it a great film. So,
well, and as usual, there was of course a cameo of Hitch in the film as well.
Of course,
he had to have his little walk on or standing in the background somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Now, your second pick here. This is one I have seen more recently, and so I'm going to be anxious to talk to you about this because this is not one of my favorite Hitchcock films. So I'm going to be interested to hear why it is one of yours. But it is, of course, The Man Who Knew Too Much.
Yes. And again, here, huge, big start of the day. This is what, 1956. So, I mean, huge stars of the day. Jimmy Stewart and Doris Day, they were huge in the film.
Yep.
So, I mean, this is like, but I like it because it's a masterclass of misdirection and tension, because the whole premise of the film is Stewart's family. He's on a family vacation. He's a doctor. He's on a family vacation with his wife, Doris Day, and their son. Mm-hmm. And they come across this guy who turns out to be a secret agent. And he's only hooking up with them because his whole mission was to find a family that looked kind of like, I guess they seem suspicious. Let's just say these people who were traveling as a family that were suspicious, and he thinks it's them, but it's not. And it isn't until later he figures that out, and then he ends up dead and passes along information to Stewart. And now Stewart's hooked up into this whole, international intrigue and stuff, and his son gets kidnapped as a result. And so now he's got to try to save his son while trying to stop this international murder that's going to happen. And it's just it's like the whole classic, ordinary man in an extraordinary circumstance. Like the Die Hard of its day, that great Christmas movie Die Hard.
Mm-hmm. Had to get that in, didn't you?
But that's why I like it. It's like got that whole thing of, like I said, the ordinary guy in extraordinary circumstance, and just great performances by Jimmy Stewart, by Doris Day, and also by Bernard Miles, as basically as he's the villain in all of this, and he just so perfectly plays it. When we first see him, you don't realize he's the villain, and then it turns out that he is, and you're like, oh my god, I didn't see that coming, because you didn't expect this guy to be the one, because he plays it so understated in the beginning part of the film. When he's in it, you would never suspect this guy, and yet that's the one who it was all along. And also I like it because, unlike most of Hitchcock's films, which either have like a twist to the end, or a down end, or just like an end where it's like the comeuppance type end, this one has basically like your typical Hollywood happy ending, which is not common for Hitchcock.
True. I never got the suspense mode. I never went into suspense mode like I wanted to in this film, and I don't know why that was, but But it's interesting, Jimmy Stewart's character in this, much like in all of his Hitchcock films, is not the greatest guy in the world. I mean, the fact that he's not truthful with his wife, he drugs her, so that
before he tells her the truth because he's afraid of her reaction, and so he
right,
just flipping out.
And he everything, like you said, does work out in the end, but it's like Jimmy Stewart knows more than he's tells his wife. Poor Doris Day, she's like frantic and freaking out because her son's been kidnapped, and Jimmy Stewart is.
The funny part is she's the one that sort of like puts it all together in the end.
It's true. That is true.
Whereas his character is like left like chasing his tail half the time, and yet she's the one that kind of figures it all out. And I also like you said, like he's not a great guy. Like there's a great scene right before what's his name? Daniel Gellin as Louis Bernard, the agent, before he dies. They're out in a marketplace in Morocco. Yeah. And him and his wife are talking about how they're paying for this great trip, and it's like, well, we're doing it because of this person's appendix and this person's gallbladder, and I'm paying for, and you would think a doctor wouldn't look at their patients in such a way, and yet he was. He's going through. You're like, wow, that's kind of jerkish to look at your patients as like the paychecks to your trips.
Yeah. I liked the fact that, especially in the 50s, we saw it where Jimmy Stewart, even in some of the Westerns, he was not the greatest guy in the world. And it was always interesting to me that you'd take an all-American icon. He did the same thing with Cary Grant, Hitchcock did, and made him not always the most likable character, but he put him in the lead. So he was your hero, but he had some flaws, wasn't necessarily didn't necessarily keep you from rooting for him, but that you did question some of their character, sometimes in these films. And you're kind of like, you didn't expect to see that from Jimmy Stewart, and
again, it all goes back to Hitchcock, where you'll find in most, if not all of his work, there's always that element, like, there's the face that you see, like Jimmy Stewart's, on the face, he's a nice guy, he's a doctor, he helps people, he cares about his family, all that's great. But then, like you said, there's also the stuff that's underneath that you don't normally see, and yet Hitchcock will show that to you. And here we are with our Hollywood happy ending right here at the very end of the film. And that's the funny thing too, is both her and him had their friends over at this apartment in London when they're trying to stop the assassination and get their son back, and they both run off and leave these people in this hotel room just to leave them, and then they finally show up. Oh yeah, here's our son, and it cracks me up every time. It's like, that's a great way to treat your friends.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I never really felt like they were gonna. Well, I mean, obviously this is the ending, so it's not a spoiler alert from a film from 1955, 56, whatever it was. But I never felt like when I was watching the film that kid was in any danger. And maybe that was just me, but that was kind of the thing that I was more interested in the interesting relationship between Jimmy Stewart and Doris Day than I was anything else that was going on in the film. And again, that may be my own, personal bias that allowed myself to get distracted.
Of course, Hitchcock sneaked in a couple scenes where she gets to sing, of course.
Yes, of course. So when she's
how could you have Doris Day in your movie and not have her sing?
Right. When she's singing Que Sera Sera, you're like, maybe that kid's not in so much danger after all. I don't know. But yeah, so this is, I think it's good. Any Hitchcock film I think is good, but it's not one of my favorites, but it's interesting. I get why you like it. And so I was just curious to see what your reasoning was for putting this in your top 5 list. Now, this is something I didn't put on my list, but is a very good film. And isn't there 2 versions? There's a silent version, and then he remade it as a talkie, The Lodger, which is a Jack the Ripper film. Have you ever seen this, James?
No, I've never seen The Lodger.
I may be mistaken, but I could swear that there's a silent version that Hitchcock directed, and then there was the talkie version, which he directed.
There you go. Geek View Tavern says that this is his mother's favorite movie.
There you go. Dave Ulbrich chiming in with, well, you know why? Because Doris Day's in it. All mothers love, my mom loves Doris Day. Loves her. So
this would probably be your mother's favorite Hitchcock movie.
It might be. My mom is not one for thrillers or horror films, but I made her watch all these with me growing up and in young adulthood. I really got on a Hitchcock kick for a while. We were watching every one of his films, and my mom is she loves cinema. She loves it, but not a huge suspense film fan, but she watched all these with me. And if Doris Day's in a film, my mom's there. So that's all I'll say. Wait a minute. Aaron, I think you mean blackmail, both silent and talkie. Well, you may be correct on that as well, but I may be wrong about the lodger, but I'm going to check that out because but that's a discussion for another time because we're going to move along. Now we're getting to
Kevin Thomas. Oh my God, that's hilarious.
You should bring Art in on this. After all, he helped convince Hitch that talkies were the future. Okay, well, there's Randy Howell's confirming that blackmail is 1929. Okay, I'm not arguing with you that blackmail was a silent and a talkie, but I'm curious about the lodger, if there was two versions of that or if I'm dreaming that. But anyway, let's take a look at this. Now, this is one that probably shows up on everybody's list.
Probably.
Just because this seems like this movie was on TV as much as the 10 Commandments was when I was younger. But anyway, go ahead.
Again, this is one, Hitchcock's take on, man versus nature, basically. This is the precursor to Jaws, as far as I'm concerned. This is what sets all that up, because you got the story of a guy, and then of course he ends up dealing with something in nature that's attacking, and that's what this is. And so this is just Hitchcock's, prelude to what was to come, kind of showing you how he was a little ahead of the curve in a lot of ways with what he did compared to others of his time. So I really like that. But yeah, I love this. It's in a lot of his films, it's the take on the upper middle class people, his views on them. Because you got Tippi Hedren in her introduction, her first movie role, and she's a well-to-do San Franciscan socialite who likes to be like a prankster. She's like a troublemaker, and and it's Hitchcock's view of these people and how they are, compared to how they try to present themselves, and that's what I like. So in this one, she meets this guy in a pet shop, Rod Taylor, who's a lawyer who on the weekends goes to this small little fishing town that he grew up in, and as a joke, she goes down there to give a gift to his little baby sister that he was looking for. And while they're down there, there's all this stuff of like a romantic triangle and interplay between parents and children, and the mother doesn't think that she's good enough for him, and all this character stuff. And then all of a sudden, all that just falls away, and it's all about the birds just coming down from the heavens and attacking. And the way he does it is so subtle. He builds it up to that, because the first time is the gull plucks her in the head. In this one scene, she gets plucked in the head, and they just brush her like, oh, it's just some freak happenstance happens, some crazy thing that happens. But as time goes on, you see more and more of this, and it ratchets up the tension slowly. So then when you get to like one of the most famous scenes is the attack at the school. And she's outside there, because she's going to pick up, Rod Taylor's sister from school, and all those birds are everywhere on the jungle gyms, on the lines, on the roof, there's like everywhere, and she knows what's about to happen. She can tell, oh no, and so all that stuff just get ratchet up, and then it's like and then after that attack, you're just waiting. When's the next attack going to happen? You're on your edge of your seat waiting for the next attack, and that's why I love it. Just like that's where he gets the title of master of suspense, as far as I'm concerned. He's like, this film is a very perfect example of why he deserves that title, because the way he sets all up. And again, there was all this great, melodrama with the characters. Like, I love Rod Taylor. He's probably like my favorite Hitchcock leading man of any film that I've seen, because he's just got those Presbyterian good looks, and he's just like so perfect as a decent guy. But yet he's got a dark side because of the way he tends to use up women, as we learn from Suzanne Plachette, where it's sort of this love triangle between him, Tippi, and Suzanne. And you see that even he has a little bit of a something to him, where like he kind of uses women, but then doesn't really give the commitment that he should, because he's being too maybe nagged on by the mother, played by Jessica Tandy, who you know, was I thought was very much a standout in this film. I loved her role there as like the matriarch, and yet you know, when the birds started attacking, you know, she was seen as like this domineering type, like strong woman. I'm telling my son what he should do with his life type of thing, and yet when the birds attack, she completely falls apart. And it's just totally, you know, she's a total wreck for the rest of the movie. And again, I like that, you know, where it was just the facade fell away, and that's kind of what this whole thing with Hitchcock's The Bird is about, the facade of, you know, what we think of as our normal lives, and yet when something crazy happens, all that just falls away, and it's all back down to, you know, the basics of humanity, of survival. How do we survive this? How do we get out of this alive?
I thought, getting back to your character analysis earlier in the film, that's one thing that always sort of stood out to me, is how everybody in this town was sort of standoffish, or I don't know if snobbish is the right word, towards Tippi Hedren, right? And then of course when the bird stuff starts happening, it's all like, well, it didn't start happening until she came into town, you know.
There
and
was that great scene in the diner when the
right,
exactly attack happens, and the woman's like, you know, this didn't happen until you got here. Who are you? What are you? Why are you doing this?
Yeah, exactly. And you're kind of like, she's like, what?
And then she slaps her.
Yeah, that's right. She did. That's right. So there was that sort of, you know, that Tippi Hedren's in this town that doesn't want her there. Well, she doesn't fit in. They don't like her. And then this happens and makes it even worse.
Well, it kind of plays to class warfare, because Tippi Hedren is, like I said, she's that upper middle class thing. And here she is, like, sort of like, you could say, slumming it in this little fishing town. And they can tell that she just doesn't, she's the square peg in a round hole. She doesn't fit. And they're like, you know, you don't belong here. What are you doing here?
Well, and I remember as a kid watching this movie, because it used to tick me off because they never explained why the birds did what they did. And then as I got older, I realized that really wasn't the point, you know. And it was that ending is terrific in this film, when they drive away and the birds are just all there. And there's a lot of ambiguity about, well, is this the end of the world? Are the animals revolting? Is this just kind of a one-off? What's is there a connection between Tippi Hedren and the birds?
Yeah, in the diner scene before the attack, you have that old woman who's talking about how, like, you know, how birds don't attack that way because, oh my God, if the birds ever like caught together to all work together to come against us, we wouldn't have a chance.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there that makes you think, you know what I mean, as opposed to presenting all that information. This, going back to the Doris Day film, Paul says, my grandfather did landscape work for Doris Day. She was super friendly to him and his coworkers. She seemed like a genuinely nice person. I mean, I never met her, obviously, but she came across very likably on screen, and it doesn't surprise me that if she was that way in real life. Let's see.
So when they're from Kevin Thomas, about when the birds is on, he always watches.
Very different from Daphne du Maurier's short story, but one of my favorites for sure. Now, I didn't read the short story. Did you?
Never read it. So again, maybe this is a case of, this is why we all love it so much, is because we don't have the reference to the short story, where if we read that, be like, oh, gee, you took a lot of liberties, Hitch. It's not quite.
Yeah. Well, again, excuse me, a lot of times, especially in film, if you're working from a short story or something, you're using it as a platform for a bigger concept. You know what I mean? Like, it's very possible the only thing he took out of the short story was the fact that a bunch of birds attacked people, you know, and then turned it into this whole thing. I don't know, because I haven't read the short story, but
yeah, the birds, because like I said, all the rest of it is just like, you know, like almost like a melodrama of like a love triangle.
Right. And I learned a long time ago that film and, you know, novelizations and films are two different mediums, and even adaptation of comic books to movies, you sort of have to kind of take them as separate entities, because they're not the same thing, you know.
And here this is a great scene. This is like, you know, after they're all trapped in the house. This is before Tippi gets attacked, and then they have to get out of the house. But you can see here the way they're arranged kind of tells you, you got the child who's scared, and Tippi is being motherly, while the mother is off in a corner, just like totally sullen, totally withdrawn. Yeah. And then you got Rod Taylor sitting on the side, like looking around, like just like he's almost like waiting for something, like he's waiting for something to happen. You know, he's like tensed up, ready to like jump when something happens. And it's just, to me, like this shows you like the whole, like I said, the whole thing of like humanity and how like all those things that we think matter so much in life, like I said, the whole, melodrama of the love triangle and the mother's disapproval and all that just falls away. And this is what you're left with.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny. It's you never got a sense that there was a great relationship between Rod Taylor and his mother. And this, like you said, this shot here, she's sitting in the corner by herself, not over there with, Tippi Hedren and her granddaughter. You know what I mean? It's just
no, that's her daughter. But yeah,
I'm sorry, his daughter. Yeah.
You would have expected her to be where Tippi is, and yet Tippi is the one kind of being more motherly than the mother actually is, because she's just so fallen apart, because she's, despite the pretense that she puts on that I'm a strong woman, she really isn't.
Okay, you're right. That was Rod Taylor's little sister, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah, so this and that the final scene where they're in the house, they're trapped in the house, and of course she goes upstairs, right? And the birds have pecked their way into that room up in the attic.
Yeah, she goes up, she hears something, and she goes up to look and to investigate it and gets trapped in the room with birds.
That was an extremely scary scene. I mean, this last segment here where they're in the house is really, really an intense, I mean, it almost gets to the level of being a horror film at this point, rather than just a suspense film, because it is really scary and how he handles that. When she gets trapped in that room.
This is what brings it out to the point that it's like I said, like a precursor for something like Jaws that would come, a decade later. It's man versus nature, and it's like, and in that battle, man versus nature, man never wins.
No, at least not without taking some losses along the way. That's for sure. And there was a whole genre, if you recall, back in the 70s, like A Day of the Dogs and Frogs and all these different movies where the animals revolted, nature revolted against man. And it seemed like that was like the genre of that decade in the 70s, or at least part of the 70s, until Star Wars came along and changed everything. But
like I said, this just shows you that Hitchcock was ahead of the curve.
Yeah, Tippi is unbelievably beautiful. Wonder why Hitchcock hired her. Yeah, he had a thing for blondes, that's for sure.
Yes, he did, and for Tippi in particular.
There's a nice little thing. The father in shadow in the portrait is between them.
That's a good point, because again, there's a scene after the mother sees a friend who was killed by the birds. Which that was a disturbing scene when you see his face with his eyes plucked out.
Yes.
That was very disturbing. And she's like I said, that's the scene that breaks her, where she stops being the strong woman and now she's just a frail female. And it's like, she says that, ever since he died, she's I've tried to be strong, but I'm not strong. He was the strength, and now his father's gone, and so now I have to lean on Mitch for strength. And that's part of why she's so domineering towards him and stuff, is because she's afraid of losing Mitch to another woman, and now I'll be alone. I'll have to be strong all by myself, and I can't because I'm not strong.
Frogs scared me so bad to sleep with my parents, says Killer Squid.
Well, if you meant it was so bad because it was a horrible movie, it's like, oh God, this movie's awful, Mom, Dad, I can't take it. I'm still wondering how all those frogs were able to subdue Ray Milland and kill him. They didn't bite him to death. We know that. Fan of here, bring it back around to comics, Pork Hunt. Bring it around. Directors of Nature Against Man films were probably fans of Bill Everett's Namor the Submariner. No, I mean, if they were into comics at all, then I would probably think that would be something they would have been into. Yeah.
Well, that is a great one. Now, this one, your next one here, your second favorite, I guess.
Number 2.
This is one of the critics' choice. One of the great films of all time.
AFI even has it on their top 100 list.
Yes. This is another one that I am, it's one that I intellectually appreciate, but don't, as a viewing experience, not one of my favorites. But go ahead, take it away, James.
Well, the thing for me about this is I just love how again, it's all about showing the darker side of people and what they show you versus what they really are. And there is no better film that shows that than Vertigo.
Yeah.
Because you got Jimmy Stewart, again, he's playing a nice guy and everything, but yet he's got the one girl, Midge, played by Barbara Bel.
Yeah, Bel Geddes. Yeah, Barbara Bel Geddes.
And yet you can see she's totally into him. And yet he just sees her as like a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And, and meanwhile, he falls for Kim Novak's character. And it's like, so it's like, he's supposed to be this great guy, but like, he's missing out on the obvious, and I love it because, again, it's all duplicity and it's all scams and it's all, deceit and love and, one-upsmanship. It's all these things that make great drama, and it's all packaged around the fact that he has agoraphobia, where he's got vertigo, and that plays the key role in this, because the husband who hires him he plays a cop who's now semi-retired because of the agoraphobia, and his friend calls him into his office and says, I want you to follow my wife because I think she's going to try to kill herself. And so he starts following Kim Novak around everywhere she goes, and they come to think that she has this thing in her head where she believes that she's like the reincarnation of this famous like Spanish woman that ended up killing herself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it ends up where they go to this high tower, and of course Stewart can't get all the way up to the top to stop her because he's got the agoraphobia, and that's what the whole hitch of it all is him having that is why all of it plays out the way it does. And I just love, like, again, the guilt that he suffers, thinking that she has committed suicide and he didn't stop it. And then later on, when we see the real story, it's like, it's all duplicity. It's all deceit. The guy hired Kim Novak to look like his wife and to lead Stewart on so that he could then kill his wife. And it was all a setup from the beginning. And then Stewart doesn't even realize this until towards the very end of the film.
Yep.
And again, he's supposed to be like this cop, this detective, and yet he had total lack of any real detective skills in figuring this out until it was almost right in his face. And I just love that. And another thing about this film, again, you'll see it in a lot of Hitchcock films, but again, this one in particular, the color. When he's in the red room in the restaurant, it is red. The scene where she comes out, after it's exposed that Kim Novak pretended to be the wife, and now he's found her again as her real self, and he does her up in the way that she was then. Right.
That's what made Jimmy Stewart's character like almost kind of creepy. It's like he meets this woman who he thinks is a different woman, and then dresses her up to look like this other woman, this man's wife, or who he believed was this man's wife. Because he was so infatuated with her. I mean, it's really bizarre.
But when she's finally done up completely and she walks out of the bathroom, and it's, you got the green lights of the Empire Hotel, and it's she's in an aura of green all around her, and it's just like a dawning of realization to him, like, oh my God, it's her. And that's why I love it, the way he used color in so much of this stuff. In this film, when you know what to look for, it's kind of reminds me of The Sixth Sense. They say watch for the color red, and when you do, you see all the cues. You're like, oh, I get it now. Now I understand. You would have, if you'd have known that, you would have known all along that Bruce Willis was dead, but you didn't know it at the time. And then once you go back and look at it, oh, there's the cue. There's the cue. There's the cue. That's what this is. When you see those rich colors, it's a key moment, and it's sticking it right in your face so that you know. And I love that about this. It's a little bit of a whodunit, and then of course he ends up overcoming his fear in the end. And I also like it because the ending, as you say, is so ambiguous. What happens in the end? Because in the end, again, I don't think I'm giving too many spoilers here. Kim Novak accidentally, he takes her back. Once he's figured it out, he takes her back and he reenacts the crime. And then he asks, why did you do this? Why? And she's like, because I did all this because I love you, Scotty. I didn't plan on that. I was helping him because he was paying me, but I didn't expect I was going to fall in love with you. And she's trying to convince him that they can still be together. And then she ends up falling out of the tower that the guy threw his wife from, and she dies in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And then Stewart's standing there at the end, looking down, seeing that, and it's like, what happens now? I mean, do they think he pushed her? You know, is he going to get in trouble legally? You know, what happened to the husband? Is he going to get caught now because now he's going to expose what happened? Is all these loose threads that are still left, and you're like, oh my God, you kind of get a bit of like a mental vertigo. What is going on? What's going to happen now? It's almost like left hanging. For that.
Well, and there's also a lot of people have speculated on his posture at the end where he's standing over that is he about to jump? Is he going to kill himself in the same way that
he's about to end himself because he can't stand the fact that now she's gone for real? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very thought-provoking film. This is interesting. I think this must have been I think he says an inspection, but an inspiration for David Lynch. Very possible. And that's a great line that Stewart, change your hair. It couldn't possibly matter to you.
Yes.
You know, it's like he really
so pushy. He was
he treated her poorly. He really did. When she was a brunette.
He treated all the women poorly because, like I said, poor Midge, you know, he doesn't even pay attention to the obvious advances she's making throughout the whole film towards him. He gets mad at her when she does the painting of the one that's reflected of the one that Kim Novak was looking at. He didn't think that was funny. He took that all personal. And then after he thinks she's dead the first time, when the husband actually threw his real wife out and killed her, and he thought that was her, and he has a breakdown from it. He's sitting in a mental ward, and she's the one playing music for him and talking to him and spending time with him, trying to help him get through this. And he doesn't even acknowledge her. And then at the end, you know, she sees the doctor. And she's like, he goes, oh, if she was in love with him, he goes, oh, well, he goes, that'll make it more complicated. She goes, I'll tell you something else, doctor. He still is. And then she walks down that hallway slowly in shadow, and then she reaches the end and turns the corner and says, it's so sad because, like, you know, she's given all she has to him, and he just totally, was oblivious to it all.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, he's pushy on the one he wants, and he's neglectful to the one who wants him. He's like not really that nice a guy.
No. The thing for me with this film is I felt it was too slow and took too long to get there for me personally. I liked the intellectual challenge of this film. I enjoyed piecing it together and how it all came together, but I felt it was too much of a slow burn for me. Now, maybe if I watched it again, I would feel different because it's been quite a long time since I've seen it.
Another thing about this film that's great is the cinematography. The shots of the Golden Gate Bridge, the shots of overlooking San Francisco, the shots in the great redwood forest with those huge trees. I mean, it's just gorgeous cinematography, like probably some of the best cinematography of any Hitchcock film.
And if memory serves, this is one movie that was not as critically acclaimed when it first came out, that sort of grew in stature over time, which oftentimes happens with films that we now look at as being classics,
And just for everything, this is 1958.
1958. So 2 years. So this was probably, Psycho was what, 1960, 61?
Yep, 1960.
So this might have been his last film before Psycho. Interesting.
Also, it's another personal favorite of mine because I think of all the Hitchcock women, I think Kim Novak was the most sexiest of them all.
Oh yeah, she was.
That was like if you say, like, you got the Bond girls, well, so the Hitchcock girls, which one's your favorite? Well, Kim Novak easily, and there he is right there at the end. This is the end of the film, folks. After Kim Novak has fallen out and plunged to her death, this is where it ends.
Yep.
And
with
so many questions are still there. Like you said, does he jump now because he knows that she's dead for real, or does he get in trouble with the law because of what happened, or does he expose what the husband did? Does the husband get caught now because of what she told him? And all these questions. What happens to Midge? Does he actually wake up now and understand that Midge cares for him? What happens to all this stuff? And you don't know. You're left hanging.
Mm-hmm. It just kind of faded to black, didn't it? At this, when he was sitting there looking over the thing, and faded to black.
And this pose he's in is also significant because when they do the intro and they do the animation for the intro, when they're doing the titles and everything, they show a scene of a body, like a man's outline, like almost like as an outline they trace, like when you're killed. And this is the pose that the character is in. It's just like a black silhouette of this pose.
So it does make me wonder if he did kill himself at the end, if that's sort of the message.
He left it so ambiguous at the end. It's like, it's almost like there needs to be a Vertigo 2 or something. To find out how it all turns out.
Vertigo 2, The Plunge, you know.
That's right.
Here, Paul's agreeing with you. He says, this is one of the best looking films of all time. Also amazing how the camera and color grading told the story more than anything else. He's basically, Paul is agreeing with you.
Yes, like I said, there is no, like I said, there's a lot of great colors in Hitchcock's films, but this one in particular, it stands out because like the color is almost like a character in the film itself.
Still only 35 cents, says, plus older dude with younger lady works. There you go. Now he's getting to the really good stuff about what's really important in that movie. Okay, so that's a pretty good one. So now we're going to your top movie, your top choice.
Yeah, my favorite Hitchcock film of all of them, at least of all that I've seen.
This would have been on my top 5 list, but you took it from me, so I'll let you have it because I've got others. But here it is.
Don't be salty, Aaron.
I've tried not to be.
The Rope. I love this film. I love this film.
Go ahead.
It's again, masterclass of tension. Because again, the whole point of the movie isn't, normally when you see a Hitchcock film with murder, it's who done it, right? Or why done it? Why did they do it? In this one, we already know all that stuff. That's given to you within like the first 5 minutes of the film. You learn who does it and why. The question now is when? When are they going to get caught? Because in case you guys know, the whole story of this is based off the premise of Leopold and some other guy, I can't remember their name, Leopold and some from the 1920s, who were a couple of young well-to-do men who thought they could commit the perfect murder. And this movie is based off of them, like the archetypes of those characters that are in this film. They are the ones that they're sort of like pastiching in the film here, is the real life murders that those guys committed in trying to commit the perfect murder. And that's what the whole point is you got 2 characters here played by John Dahl and Farley Granger. And they're 2, again, well-to-do people. These are upper middle class people, folks, like Hitchcock always does. And they have this idea of the superior intellect, and that if you're of superior intellect, there is nothing that is beyond you to do, including murder. Right. And so they're going to try to commit the perfect murder to show how intellectually superior they are to almost all other people. And after they kill the person, they hide them in their apartment, and they have a party at the apartment with the body still in there. And so you're sitting there the whole time wondering, when are people going to figure this out? When someone going to trip across some clue that's going to lead them to the body? And the whole person that is focused on is Jimmy Stewart, who is their former teacher or professor from college, who is the one who instilled in them this idea of superior intellect. And so it's the whole time you're watching, and you're just watching, Stewart trying to piece it all together. And I say, unlike his guy in Vertigo, who didn't piece it together until the end, this guy, what's his name? Rupert Candle, he figures it out much sooner, because he's totally on. He's sniffing it out almost right from the beginning. He's sniffing it out, and it's just, I just love it, and I love the way he shot the film. It's all one long shot.
Yep, one take.
With only a few breaks in between, like when they'll pull back behind a person and it's all shadow for like just a second. That's because they had to change reels on the film.
Right.
So it was all one long shot, people walking in between rooms in one long shot, and it's just beautifully done. I love Jimmy Stewart's character in this. Once again, he's a bit sardonic with people and stuff. Like there's the scene during the dinner party where they're talking about seeing movies or something, and it's like and the woman's talking about, like, she's saying, "Oh, I saw something about something, and it had something to do with something," and he's mocking them because they don't know the names of stuff, and he's like, it's what do you call it? He goes, "Oh, it's something." It's, yes, that's it. And he's like totally looking down, almost like he's looking down his nose at people, like he thinks they're just too stupid. but yet he's still got the charm that he gets away with it.
Yeah.
Which again, it all plays into everything that's building. He's the one watching all the reactions of people. He's the one listening to hearing what they're saying and what they're not saying. And it's just, a precursor to Columbo. Yes.
Funny.
Yes. Only where Columbo plays dumb, Rupert plays super smart. Like, I'm smarter than all of you. That's how he plays it, whereas Columbo plays dumb.
Yep. This movie, out of all of Hitchcock's films, for me, this is the most disturbing film, because you've got two young men committing a murder because they feel superior and because they think they can. There's no motivation, right? There's no, oh, you stole my girlfriend, or you did me wrong, or whatever.
Well, the motivations are the thrill of the kill, the thrill of doing it, and trying to prove your intellectual superiority to get away with it.
Right, but that's a horrifying thought when you think that someone would commit murder for reasons like that, because then at that point anybody could potentially be a killer, right?
Yeah.
If that's the only motivation it requires.
Well-to-do people in this film, they're all well-to-do, all the higher upper echelon, upper middle class and greater. These aren't like poor people or people who were downtrodden or people who were quote unquote oppressed or any of that kind of thing where you could say, well, there's some reasoning why they did it. These are like the most affluent people, and they're doing this. So if the people who have the most in society are willing to do this, what's that say about the rest of society?
Yeah, that's why this film I find so unsettling. And
like I said, it's based off of reality, because he took the concept of it from Leopold, and again, I can't remember the other guy's name. There was two guys in like the mid-20s who killed somebody, and it was a thrill killing, and they did it because they wanted to see if they could commit the perfect murder.
Yeah, right. I mean, I remember that being,
and of course they didn't. Of course, because they ended up getting caught and going to prison.
Right. So Paul says, so just like current day elites. Yeah, very much so in a lot of ways.
The only difference between these elites and our current day ones is these ones are just a little more honest about it than ours are. Ours try to cover it up under things that oh no, I believe in this and I believe it's not about that, but no, it really is. And but these guys they're just like kind of in your face. Yeah, this is what it's about. We think we're better than you.
Well, the interesting thing also, the technical side of this film being that I'm pretty I'm going to be careful here. It's played like a stage play. I don't know if it originally was one and they adapted it. Was it?
It was originally a stage play.
Okay. Yes. So he's shooting this film like a stage play, all in one take, basically, except where they had to make the breaks to switch reels, as you pointed out. And that's always with a camera movement behind somebody or behind a piece of furniture so that we could go black for a second and they could switch film or reels. But if you look at this closely, the staging and how he moves people into close-ups and the long shots, it's all by camera movement and actor movement. He's creating this depth in this basically a 3-room apartment. You've got the main room where they're having the party. There's the entryway and then the kitchen, right? And you've got the dining area, and you've got these people moving back and forth between these connected rooms. And it's just, it's just ingenious, because at one point, or in one term, it's seamless, right? It just, the action plays out in front of you. But if you step back and take a look from a technical aspect of what Hitchcock's doing, it's just brilliant how he stages the whole thing and moves people around. Well, again,
like to doing that today isn't nearly as impressive as when Hitchcock did. Like today, you've got digital,
right? So
it's like I saw the movie 1917 in film in the theaters. It was the last time I saw. Yeah, that was the last time I saw pre-pandemic 1917, and it was shot the same way. It's one long scene that follows everybody, and it was great. I loved it for that, but that didn't feel as impressive now with the technology that allows you to do that so much more easily than it did back in 1948 when Hitchcock did this. When he did it, that's revolutionary. That's like no one had ever done that before.
Yeah, I was always impressed with Hitchcock's willingness to challenge himself, right? To take a film, and we'll see this in some other films coming up on my list, where he really sort of handicapped himself in terms of, in this case, no cutting, right? No editing. and in a small environment, or in other films that I won't spoil, but we're gonna get to, where you have a very restricted location. And how do you build a 2-hour film, keep it suspenseful, keep it interesting, when you've got very little scenery around you, and it's just masterful how he would take on these challenges and really pull them off effectively.
And like I said, just as with almost all Hitchcock films, this is why he's the master of suspense. Because again, you know who the killers are, you know why they did it, and you know who's done it. Now it's just a matter of when are they going to get caught? And it's all tension the entire time. The entire time you're listening to them talk to people at the party, and they're hanging out, and you're just like, when is somebody going to catch on to this? Because again, even as you see it, the one guy, Brandon, played by John Dahl, who I thought was like the standout in this film for me, was him. Mm-hmm. He's dropping little hints all the time, saying little things that will set somebody off to go, what do you mean by that? And no one ever. Yeah, there is Leopold and Loeb. Yes. Thank you, Albie. That is exactly who this story is taken from. Leopold and Loeb from the 1920s. They were two, again, well-to-do people, well-to-do young guys who thought they could commit the perfect murder. And of course, they were wrong. But again, it was based on, and that's what it's. But yeah, he's saying all this stuff. He's doing all this stuff, giving these like little telltale signs that nobody except Jimmy Stewart is picking up on. And it's just waiting, you're watching, you're like, oh my god. And then when little things happen, like when the maid is clearing off the chest where they were having the food set upon, where they hid the body in the chest and they put the food on top of it just to mess with people more. And then she's clearing it off, and then you're like, oh my god, is she going to open it? Is she going to find out? Oh my god. It's just so much tension in this film the entire time, and I'm just like, oh my god. And then of course the ending, when Rupert gets his own words thrown back in his face, and he even says it. He goes, for you to tell me that you've done this horrible thing, and yet you're using my own words to justify. You're throwing my own words back in my face. He goes, I just said it as a mental exercise. I wasn't saying we should actually do it, and yet here you've gone and done it, and it's and it's just. Yeah, and again, that's again the flaw of the character is he's so mentally, he's like maybe so academically superior to people. He's not thinking in common sense terms of, hey, saying some of this stuff might lead someone to think, hey, maybe I should try that.
Yeah,
he didn't ever think that would happen. And again, this is just 3 years after the war, where we had a guy who thought genetically superior could be a thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, all this stuff in there is like, wow, just amazing stuff, like a master class of tension. And like I said, it's my favorite Hitchcock film for that. It's the way it was shot, the great performances by John Dahl and Jimmy Stewart, and just the master class of tension that it is. I love Rope.
Well, and the contrast between how cool and arrogant John Dahl's character is, and Farley Granger's character just losing it, right? And just
slowly losing it over time. Yeah,
he can't keep it together. He's so afraid, and John Dahl trying to be cool and keep everything under control. It was really interesting that sort of contrast between those two guys' characters in this film. So yeah, there's a lot to like about this movie, and like I said, it would have been in my top 5 if you hadn't taken it from me. So okay, so that's your number 1, right?
That was number 1, and here's
let me show this picture that you brought up too, because this is kind of this is the end of the film, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the penultimate moments of the film. Yes, when Rupert returns after having left the party. Because there was a key thing that happened just before he left that gave him the clue he needed to know had to figure out what had gone on. And here he is sitting there talking with them, talking about what might have happened to this guy who didn't show up to the party, which is the one that they killed. And he's trying to explain to him, well, if I was going to do it, this is how I do it. And this is what he's sitting there talking to them about. He's basically explaining their plan to them that they've already committed. And you got John Dahl sitting there. You can't see it. He's got his hand in his pocket on the other side with a gun in there. So if Rupert were to say the wrong thing, bang, and it's just he's so totally, into it. And as you said, this is the key moment. He's like, oh my God, are they going to kill Rupert because he knows too much? Or what's going to happen here? Is there going to be a second murder?
Yeah,
and just from the expressions on Farley and Dahl, you can see their mentality. Look at Farley's face. He's looking like he's scared at what he's saying, while Dahl is kind of like, He's just waiting for him to say the wrong thing, and then he's going to pull out the gun. I mean, just that's to me this is like the key scene of the entire film, and I love it.
Chris brings up, wasn't this a Technicolor movie? Imagine the logistics of just moving that huge camera around the set. Yeah, it's true. Those were not like small cameras. I don't know. Was this Technicolor?
Well, I think I'd read somewhere that some of the cast complained about the way that they had to step around on the set because of the way the camera had to roll to move and stuff, and the way it was set up. It was sometimes cumbersome when they're trying to move around, and they complained about that.
Yeah, let them complain. Actors, shut up and hit your mark.
Hey, they did hit their mark. That's why this movie is so great.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, when you're doing a film like this, the amount of rehearsing, because you basically have, I don't know how many times there was cuts in the film. Someone suggested like 10 or something. I don't know if there were that many, but maybe there were.
I think here's the funny thing. This station on cable I have called Flicks. All this month on Sunday nights from like 8 p.m. to about 2 a.m. they're replaying Hitchcock films. So I've been watching a lot of this stuff again, and I saw Rope again. There was, I think, 6 breaks in the film. There were 6. Because I was trying to count them when they happened. I believe there were 6.
Right. And I'm going to guess this film was probably less than 90 minutes, but probably in that neighborhood. So
I think somewhere between like 80 to 90 minutes, somewhere in there.
So you've got 6 15-minute segments where everybody had to hit their marks, had to know their lines, had to deliver a performance. I mean, that's pretty difficult, and so I would imagine the amount of rehearsing that went into this was
no, Andino. Flicks is not an adult station. Unless you mean it's adult in the sense of they're playing movies that adults would like to watch. Yes, but it's not an adult station. It's actually a movie station. It plays
always
stuff that you will not find in underground theaters.
Yeah, that's right. And Dino's always good for some off-color comments. That's for sure.
More of these scenes that you're trying to stick it to you.
Well, yeah, usually that's
superiority, like Serpentor. In the mind, Dr. Mindbender, aka Aaron Lopresti, with a monocle and a cape. He's like Dr. Mindbender from G.I. Joe.
Yeah. Yeah, and see, these guys are. I don't cannonball on Saturdays. I only do it on Sundays, you guys. You got to save your good material for tomorrow. All right. Well, let's get into my list then.
Yes.
Okay. Now this is number 5 on my list. This is another film we were just talking about where Hitchcock limits himself. The entire film takes place in a life raft in the middle of the ocean. Right. So the interesting thing, have you seen this?
I haven't seen this one. This is one of the ones I haven't seen.
Oh, all-star cast, right? So you've got, William Bendix, Walter Slezak, John Hodiak is in it. Henry Hull, the Werewolf of London, is in it. Hume Cronin. I could have sworn Jessica Tandy was in there, maybe not.
Yeah, unlike The Trouble with Harry, who would become an all-star cast over time. Yeah. This really is an all-star cast of the time.
Right. And basically what happens is these people are hit by a German U-boat. The ship is sunk. And they're all hauled onto this life raft, the survivors of this. And then there's a German U-boat captain, and I'm trying to remember because it's been a long time since I've seen it, but they pick him up later or something. But anyway, he is manning the boat or the life raft. He's doing all the rowing and stuff. And he's basically trying to kill them off one by one. It's very, there's this scene where William Bendix,
people one by one in a lifeboat.
Yeah. Well, people fall asleep. And this great scene with William Bendix is, in other words, to save the provisions and things like that. This German guy is making the tough choices. Right. And William Bendix they were told, don't drink the salt water, right? Because it'll just make you more dehydrated, make it worse. So he's starting to see, William Bendix is starting to lose it. starts drinking some of the salt water. Everybody's like passed out and asleep. And the German guy he's just kind of pushes him over the side and lets him drown, and they just keep on going. And then he wakes up and, I can't remember the excuse he used for, maybe he feigned he was asleep and that William Bendix must have fallen overboard. But one of the critics of the critics of this film at the time were basically saying that they felt that Hitchcock was elevating the German soldier to be like a super soldier, that he was more powerful than these other people because he had stashed a bottle of water under his coat and he wasn't sharing it, And so he was like drinking it and staying fresh while these other people are just dying in the heat and everything like that. And so, which I don't think, it didn't come across that way to me at all. I kind of felt like he was cheating, you know what I mean? So yeah, he was stronger than the other ones, but he was cheating. He was, it showed what a lack of humanity he actually had, But the thing that's so cool about the movie is you sit there and think, can I sit here for 2 hours or whatever, hour and a half, whatever it is, and watch this film when the entire cast is stuck on a life raft for the entire movie? It's like, how can you make this engaging? And yet Hitchcock does it. And it's because there's great characters in there. And of course they talk about their lives and talk about who they are. And they're plotting against this German guy who's sitting 5 feet away from him right at the end of the rubber raft. And, what can we do about this? And, is he taking us where he says he's taking us, or is he rendezvousing with a German U-boat and all this kind of stuff going on the whole time? And he finally gets his comeuppance at the end, but it's just a fascinating, in typical
Hitchcock fashion, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's fascinating to watch a master filmmaker take such a difficult situation thematically and visually and make it work effectively. I mean, this got nominated for Best Picture, it was, and he got nominated, of course, for Best Director. It's a tremendous feat. And so just for no other reason, it's worth watching in a lot of ways. Like Rope, it doesn't have sort of the same kind of suspense and tension that Rope does, because you're not dealing with a murder, but you are dealing with these people. Will they survive or not? Who will survive? Who won't survive? Those type of questions. But it's still
only 30 cents says it looks like Helen Hunt on the poster.
Helen Hunt. Oh, and I think that's Tallulah Bankhead. She was like, I didn't know who she was until I saw this film. And then she was actually a bigger star earlier in the late 30s and early 40s. But she was very snobbish, her persona, so, and in this, she plays a very rich, snobbish woman, and who her romantic interest is John Hodiak. And I'm trying to remember if they were actually, they were that way before they got on the boat, or they sort of, there's not a lot of room to hook up, obviously, because you got a life raft full of people.
Well, if you're stuck on a lifeboat with a bunch of people, it's kind of hard to get your groove on.
Yeah, exactly. But they sort of, you could see the pairing sort of chummed up. I mean, what's his face? Hume Cronin, he was like, I believe he had a young bride. They were like newlyweds. And so there's all this kind of interesting, character stuff going on, as well as like I said, the physical parameters or restrictions of filming this, in filming this film in such a closed environment, and yet just masterfully done. So if you haven't seen this one, you should check it out, because it is really quite good, which is probably an understatement. And we are talking about Hitchcock.
Pork gives you permission.
All right, I actually went a little bit farther this time like you, and actually got a still from the movie. But so you have Bendix here, Henry Hull's here. That's Tallulah Bankhead, Hume Cronin back there. This is his wife. I can't remember who the actress was. And then, of course, William Bendix over here. So, and then this is, John Heward, and I don't know, not Heward. Dang it, I just said his name. And I got to bring up the poster because John Hodiak, and then of course behind them is the German officer or U-boat guy, rowing the boat. So very interesting. So yeah, exactly. There you go. Germans equals unsharing and uncaring. Right. Well, I mean, I think that Hitchcock portrayed him exactly as the sentiment was towards, I mean, because this was 46, so it was a year right after the war.
That's how probably most people felt about Germans at the time.
Yeah, at that time, yeah. So,
and especially a Brit like Hitchcock.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure. Exactly. It's Sunday in Australia, Aaron, so cannonball away.
He's giving you permission.
Yeah. Okay. So that would be number 5. So number 4.
There you go. Paul Brillart says, juxtaposition. Hume Cronin was later in Cocoon.
Yes. That's what I was thinking. Jessica Tandy was in this with them because, of course, that was Hume Cronin's wife, but she was not in this movie. Okay. Here's another.
This is a classic.
Now, this wouldn't have been on my list. Rope would have been here, but this is really, really good. And again, it's in a lot of ways similar to the stuff we're talking about because you're basically in this two-room apartment the entire film, and the shots you see are outside the apartment, when the police are walking down the street or Ray Milland is coming and going, those type of things. But you never go beyond the purview of what you can see out through the bedroom window. And so in this, I'm sure you've seen this, right, James? Or
yeah, it's been quite a while since I've seen it, but yes, I have seen Dial M for Murder because Grace Kelly is beautiful in this.
Yes, and she's rich, and she marries again snobby rich people, right?
Well-to-do people, yes, that's
right.
He likes to take them down a notch. It seems
right. So Ray Milland is this former tennis pro who's really kind of a bum, and he's living off his wife, and decides that her money might be better off spent just by him. And so he arranges to have this guy.
How that always works out.
Yeah, isn't it? And so he hires this guy to come in and kill Grace Kelly, and he sets up this elaborate thing where he gives the guy the key. I mean, he works it all out in his head, Ray Milland, how he's going to pull off the perfect crime, right? He's going to not be there when it happens. And I think he had a plan. I'm trying to remember now that he was going to kill the dude that he hired to kill his wife, like walk in and self-defense or whatever, something crazy like that. But what happens is the guy sneaks in the apartment while Grace Kelly's there alone. She calls him on the phone. So he set it up so that he would be on the phone with her when this guy attacks her. So he's got the perfect alibi, right?
Yeah.
Well, the guy tries to kill her, but she ends up hitting him on the head with the phone and killing him. Right? So then it's set up that it looks like she's the one who's going to take the fall for murder and go to jail. And Ray Milland's like, oh, hey, that works. I still get her money. But this savvy police detective, I guess played by Robert Cummings, I don't remember. I'm going to assume that's who it was. Well, no, he called, that probably was the romantic interest of Grace Kelly from school. She's married to Ray Milland, but this other guy comes in that, she had a romance with before that's fighting for her. So I assume that's probably who Robert Cummings was. But there's this savvy detective along with Robert Cummings who figure out this whole thing that it was Ray Milland, And it's so funny when he gets caught at the end, he's just sort of like, I gave it a shot. Congratulations, you guys, when he realized there was no way out for him.
Pearson or Detective Williams?
Robert Cummings?
No, Robert Cummings is Mark Halliday. You're talking about
right. He's Grace Kelly's former love interest.
Which is the detective you're talking about? Because they got I pulled it up here on IMDb. It says there's a couple of detectives in here. Is it Detective Pearson is the one that figures it out, or is it?
I can't remember, but it's the older guy. If it shows a picture,
Chief Inspector Hubbard, is that the one?
That might be the guy.
That's John Williams who plays that role.
With John, of course, that's John Williams, not the composer. Big Raj throws Canadian $1.99 my way with a super sticker. Thank you so much, Big Raj. Appreciate that.
So between the exchange rate and the inflation, that's about 25 cents.
Yeah. Paul Brillart says, think Spielberg saw that evil German soldier characterization and used it in Saving Private Ryan. Probably. He was Spielberg's a huge Hitchcock fan.
Oh, here you go. Oh, look at it. Oh, Peyton. Look at Peyton. He's trying again for a cannonball. I'm telling you. Look at this.
Dial L for Cornhuskers. Oh, Peyton, that I'm going to remember that tomorrow. I'm going to remember that. See, I have a list and I write you guys down so I don't forget.
Yeah, Marcus Killigrew makes a good point.
Yeah, you couldn't make a lot of these with cell phones today. That's right. You'd never get away with any of this stuff. There you go. The chief inspector is John Williams. There you go. Yeah. So anyway, again, it's not a movie that, other than the scene where this guy's trying to murder Grace Kelly, it's not a scene or not a movie that's full of like high tension, but it's a movie that you can really appreciate the cleverness and trying to will these guys figure this out before Grace Kelly gets hung or whatever. Did they do electric chair or hung back then? I don't remember.
It's just fun to watch to see the eye candy that is Grace Kelly.
Well, speaking of which, allow me to share a nice little picture of Grace reading the paper from the film.
There you go. See, she later became a princess.
Yeah, I was going to say before she became Princess of Monaco, there she is, Grace Kelly, and considering how Hitchcock would at times treat his female leads, it's surprising she did several movies with Hitchcock, but we'll get to that in a minute. But Grace Kelly was not the squeaky clean image that she portrayed.
The 9 times out of 10, Aaron, they never are.
They never are. This isn't a very big picture, but that's okay. So my third, and this is one you stayed away from because you said it was too obvious, but if you're not going to do it, I certainly am. I mean, regardless of how obvious that is, this is still a great flick, and maybe one of his, along with The Birds.
I'll tell you, as far as all the movies go, except for Rope, this is my favorite.
Yeah,
Rope
but you
is the only one that outdoes this one.
Well, the interesting thing, this is as close to a horror film as, like The Birds kind of went that direction as well, but this is really very close to being this is more of what I would consider a horror film than just a suspense thriller or whatever. The interesting thing about this movie, of course, is that we spend so much time setting up Janet Leigh, and then she gets killed, and you're like, what? And
then the only person you're left to identify with is the killer.
Yeah.
Again, great moment. One of my favorite moments in the film is the one where he's pushing the car into the swamp after he's killed her and cleaned up. He's pushing the car into the swamp, and it's bubbling down. He's sitting there watching it go down, and all of a sudden it's bloop, 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 and it stops. And he's like looking around and like, oh God, what am I going to do? And all of us were all like, oh my God, is he not going to get away with it? And then bloop, 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 it starts going again. And, and he smiles, that little corner smile, like, oh,
yeah.
And then we all feel so much like, oh, thank God. Oh.
Well,
we were scared for the killer to get caught.
Well, this is interesting because it is, if you had the good fortune of watching this film without knowing anything about it, which was pretty hard for people of our generation and later because it's such a classic and talked about so much, I knew, quite frankly, I knew everything about this film before I saw it, so it took the edge off of it. But
I remember I've heard stories that back in 1960 when this debuted, Hitchcock had the theaters told the theaters, when you start showing the film, close the doors and let nobody in. Don't let anybody walk in the middle of this. Not just you. If you don't get to the theater in time and you have a ticket, you're just SOL.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's like, can you imagine watching this film and it's kind of like watching Westworld, right? And you're like, James Brolin is the cool guy, and then he gets shot and killed by Yul Brynner, and you're like, wait a minute, am I supposed to root for the nerd? And who's played by Richard Benjamin in Westworld, of course. But that's the same way. It's like Janet Leigh, she's doing something she shouldn't do, but she feels guilty about it the whole time. Like, I probably shouldn't be doing this, but she does it anyway. But you're kind of, she's very sympathetic, right?
Well, but here's the thing: when again, I just saw this one last weekend when they were showing it on Flicks. all of this hitches on one simple little thing that when you don't even think about it at the time, but when having watched it so many times as I have, I've noticed it now. Everything that goes down happens for one simple reason, because the boss saw her after work on the same day when she was in that car. That's how she got caught. If he wouldn't have been crossing the street at that exact moment with her at that light at that exact same time, she could have gotten clean away with that. She never would have went to the basement hotel. She would have went straight to her man, and who knows what would have happened after that. But I mean, that's what would have happened. But because of that one little thing, because the boss happened to cross the street just as she was right at the light when she's supposed to be home sick with a headache, all this happens now. Everything that happens after that, the cop that follows her changing the car, her stopping at the Bates Motel, all of that happens because the boss saw her. If he wouldn't have saw her, none of that would have happened.
Yep. It's really quite clever. And then, then you sort of, you have to switch your allegiance from her to her sister, who really then becomes sort of a major player in the second half of the film, right? Where they're trying to track down to figure out what happened to her.
She's not nearly as sympathetic a character as Janet Leigh was.
No, not at all.
Much more pushy, much more bossy, like, kind of like, the classic, witch, like, you just want to slap her sometimes.
But she had reason to be. It was righteous indignation, right? Because she was trying to find out who killed her sister. So you kind of, but yeah, in terms of likability, she wasn't anywhere near as likable as Janet Leigh was.
Which is why we all then tend to start to focus more on Norman, because even though we know he's a killer, he's just so soft-spoken and so but and you kind of feel for the guy, because again, at first you're thinking it's his mother that's killing, and you're like,
right, you didn't even think it was him. So yeah, you're sorry for the guy.
Beautiful son, he's watching out for his mother who's crazy. He can't help this stuff. You almost feel pity for him at first. There it is.
That, I mean,
what I'd say one of the top 10 most famous scenes in all of cinema history.
Probably, yeah, and one of the most terrifying. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's especially this shot right here where you're in the shower with her, not literally, of course, and then you see the door open and this kind of creepy shadow coming in, and he pulls back the curtain, and of course there's the old lady, or so we think, with the knife. And I mean, this just set the stage for so many movies that followed,
Interesting thing to note, though, this was like one of the last scenes shot in the film. And by this point, Anthony Perkins had moved on to do something else, do other work. And they actually had someone fill in this scene. It wasn't Anthony Perkins who was doing the stabbing in this scene.
Oh, really?
That's why it's also so heavily silhouetted, not just to keep the killer's identity a secret, but if you did happen to catch a glimpse, you would see not only is it not the mother, but it's not Anthony Perkins either.
Right, like who the heck is that?
Who is this killer that just shows up out of nowhere dressed like a woman for some reason, kills her and leaves, and then the rest of the movie is what? How does this all
what's
work?
Going on? No, and the scene, of course, where who played her sister? Why can't I think of her name?
Vera Miles.
Thank you. Vera Miles goes into the basement, right? And there's the dead body of the mother in the rocking chair. And when she turns that thing around and you see that face for the first time, and then Norman Bates comes at her from behind in the costume.
Yeah.
That is a really horrifying scene. Also, Martin Balsam getting whacked at the top of the stairs.
Yes.
Was very intense and creepy. There's a lot of really good creepy scenes in this film. And most people in here are basically, yeah, it's great.
And something we haven't spoken on any of the films yet, but again, just as much an important factor. And again, especially in this one, the score. Herman Bernard, man. Where would Hitchcock be without Herman?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, the music whenever there's a craziness about the drop and you hear those high pitched whines of those violins, I mean, you just oh my God.
Yeah, it's terrific. I mean, just when you think of guys like this, or John Williams, who's come up with some just amazing scores, and something as simplistic.
Jerry Goldsmith, another one, is great.
Yeah,
great one. He's done a lot of great scores.
like the simple chords in or notes in Jaws, and how memorable it is. It was the same with this, that kind of shrieking.
Another person who's probably more noted for their director work, but not so much their musical scores. Mm-hmm. John Carpenter.
Yeah.
For Halloween, Assault on Precinct 13. Dun, 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 dun. I mean, that's all. It's very simplistic, very minimalist, and yet it's so effective.
Yes, so memorable. That's the thing. And poor cunt says the camera angle could have been a little lower, but that's
the angle that Hitch had. So you couldn't show that angle.
That's right. Psycho 2, actually, as I recall, was actually pretty good too. Now, obviously, Hitchcock didn't direct that.
It's an excellent sequel because I forget the name of the director, but he was trying so hard to be so faithful to the vision of Hitchcock, and that's why it works. I say Psycho 2 is the one that bridges the gap from classic horror like this to what was the more modern slasher of the time, and it sort of marries them together in a way that actually works because the guy was being so faithful to the vision of Hitchcock, and that's why it worked. Because I've seen all 4 of the movies, and only the second one is the really good one. I mean, the third one is okay, directed by Anthony Perkins, but again, if you didn't have Norman Bates in the Bates Motel, you wouldn't even know it was a Psycho movie. It could have been a completely different movie. Just change the name of the character, change the name of the hotel, and it's a completely different movie. Psycho 3. Psycho 4 I liked, even though it was direct to video, because it went into the history. You learned about what happened with Mother before he kills her. And I liked all that history stuff. But then again, at the very end, like the last part of the film, like the last, that last act, it all kind of falls apart in the end. And it's like, oh man, it was so good up until now. And so the only really good sequel to Psycho was the second one. And again, that's because the guy was so driven to be like a devotee of Hitchcock.
This is an important note here that Mark Pengrim says, don't forget this is the movie they actually got yelled at for showing a toilet flush on screen. They also showed a black bra, groundbreaking. Yeah, well, that's Hitch for you. But this, I mean, I remember as a kid watching Happy Days, and there's a scene in the television show Happy Days where they're going to see Psycho, and they can't get out. Richie's friends keep coming over, Potsy and Ralph Mouth and all these guys, and Ralph comes in the door, and I remember Joni going, "We're gonna go see Psycho," and he goes, "Anthony Perkins plays his own mother," So walking out the movie. Yeah, he spoiled the entire movie for him, and then Howard goes, "Okay, we're gonna go for a drive. Have you seen that, Ralph?" Because he kept ruining every movie they were gonna go see. But
we all know that guy.
Yeah. So as an early age, before I'd even seen Psycho, I knew how it ended because of that Happy Days episode. So. All right.
And so again, thematically, and even some of the scenes themselves were lifted and done in other films that came later. So you probably saw something that was derivative of Psycho,
right?
Long after it had come out. So it's like no wonder you can't be surprised. But yeah, I imagine that the people back in 1960, that probably shook them to their core. Oh my God, I've never seen anything like this before.
Yep. So here's number 2 for me.
Classic.
I like Cary Grant a lot. I think you want to talk about a guy who didn't get the credit for being a versatile actor. He did great comedy, even slapstick comedy, was great in straight drama roles. Hitchcock used him a lot, like Jimmy Stewart there. And this is, although it's not, what do I say? It almost feels a bit like a James Bond film more than it feels like a thriller or something.
It feels more like action adventure.
Yeah, it's just a terrific film. Cary Grant, of course, carries it with his performance, and there's always that kind of sense of humor to it, especially where Cary Grant's involved. He always has a few quips and one-liners in there at the most inopportune times, or maybe the most opportune time, but just the relationship that he has with what's her name, the actress that plays
blanking.
Yeah, I know she was in On the Waterfront. Come on, Chad, help me out. I know who it is. I just can't think of her name. Anyway, their relationship in the film is interesting because she's like this. I don't know if she's really would you call her a spy or just someone that works for the CIA or whatever. I'm waiting for her name to come up. I can't believe everybody's. But Pork Hunt has thrown me.
Eva Marie Saint, is that
Eva Marie Saint? Yes. Pork Hunt's for $5. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, man. That's Australian $5 too. That's that funny Monopoly money they have down there in Australia.
Well, next reviews. Ours here is going to be about as valuable as that. So
yeah. Next reviews you've both got to do is best film sequels. William Batty's Legion follow-up to The Exorcist still has the best jump scare. I've never seen that.
That would be interesting to do the best sequel films. That's an interesting topic, Pork. Kind of have to think on that one.
Yeah, that is a good one. Paul Brillard says running and looking debonair at the same time. It's so true.
That's that old Hollywood style right there.
Yeah. But this is one of those movies. You know how I said that I felt Vertigo was too
much of a slow burn.
Yeah, too much of a slow burn, too drawn out for me. This feels like a long film, but it's so packed with stuff. It's like because the locales keep changing, right? You know, he's in New York City. They're at the Mount Rushmore. They're at an art auction. They're on a train. You know, that it's just they're up in the hills. You know, and in James Mason's little hideout. There's some great stuff going on, and the tension for me in this film is not so much. Cary Grant keeps getting in more and more trouble, and he plays this great character who's just, I don't know if you want to call him dumb, but he's just like he just keeps getting in deeper and deeper and has no idea what's going on as he's trying to figure it out. But you really get there worried about Eva Marie Saint.
He's not dumb. He's kind of oblivious, is what it is.
Yes, there you go. And you wonder there. Getting near the end, is Eva Marie Saint, do they know? Are they onto her? Are they going to kill her? You know, so there is some nice, tension there at the end. But I just as a action adventure film, this really, even from, whenever this was made, 50s sometime, I should have done 59. My research on my dates, 59, and an older Cary Grant. It's still, it moves. It's exciting. It's funny.
Well, I mean, you can buy Cary Grant in this if you can buy, like, say, for example, Harrison Ford in Air Force One. If you can buy that, you can buy this. Older Harrison Ford playing the president, kicking butt on his presidential plane being hijacked. I mean, if you can believe that, you can believe this.
Well, but Cary Grant, I don't think he ever gets in a fight in this movie, does he? I mean, it's not. It's just, I just love how he just keeps getting put into one bad situation after another, and then how he barely gets out of it. And he's, like in this scene where he's getting chased down by the crop duster, his suit gets ruined. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, he's all pissed off at his suit. I gotta get my suit clean, and it's just one thing after another. And then
here you go. Pork Hunt calls it Eva Marie Saint is fantastic in this, and Grant is sublime and has beautiful comic timing. And Grant is, and here you go. Here's the kicker. And Grant is the non-traditional masculine hero.
Yes. Well, again, he's a rich, snobbish guy, who's, he's always calling his mother, it's just interesting characterization and, but just a really enjoyable film. And that's kind of that's why this is so high on this list for me. I know everybody's loves this film. It's a 4-star classic, but it's just, to me, is a really enjoyable film to watch. And, I don't have to, it's not so deep like Vertigo where you really kind of have to pay attention to what's going on and look at all the elements and how does it all come together. This is pretty much laid out. There is some mystery, but it's not that much of a mystery. And at least to the viewer, but it's just a lot of fun to watch, and that's why it ranks so high on my list. The fun of it
isn't trying to figure the movie out. The fun of it is watching it unfold.
Right, exactly, and being a part of it. Which is part of what makes good cinema. Right, is drawing you in so that you're sharing the experience to a certain degree. There he is with Eva Marie Saint sharing a drink. He's very suspicious of her, as he should be, but for the wrong reasons.
Hitchcock and his blondes.
Yep.
And see, again, look at the color in her dress. Look at how that red just pops.
Yeah, yeah. And an otherwise gray room. His suit is gray. The walls are white. The bedspread's gray. She has this beautiful red dress.
Yes.
Oh, Brillard, going to see Elvis Costello. Are you kidding me? I didn't even know Elvis Costello was still performing. Look at that.
I didn't know he was still alive.
Yeah. It's silly, but what always takes me out of old movies is how well dressed everyone is. Even the plumbers sometimes wear 3-piece suits. I know the good old days, right, man? We always
that's what I call it Hollywood's golden age, because everyone wanted to look good.
That's true. And it was, it was important. You see, even artists, like you see those old pictures of Kirby wearing a tie and a jacket while he's drawing, Let's see. Also, we learned the word libation from this film. How about that? So anyway, okay. Now to my number one. This shouldn't be a big surprise to anybody.
I'm going to take a guess.
Yeah.
I'm guessing Rear Window.
You know what? You would be correct. There it is. This is not only my favorite Hitchcock film. It's in my top 5 of films, period. This is, well, first of all, you've got Grace Kelly again. You've got Jimmy Stewart again playing I don't want to say an anti-hero, but he's, again, he's a guy with, he's not the cleanest guy.
He's a nosy guy.
Well, yeah, I mean, how bizarre is it that he's
it works. I mean, he's like a photojournalist is what his profession is. And so, of course, he's always the kind of guy who's sticking his nose into other people's business. But like here he's doing it to his own neighbors. And it's like, dude, you would think, come on, man.
But how tempting. You got to think, if you lived in an apartment, right, that was basically built the way this apartment building was, so you could look out into the courtyard and see into everybody's window. And it's summer, right? So everybody's got their windows open. And, how tempting it is for just, it's like looking over your neighbor's backyard. I don't know what they're doing, And it's like when you've got all this playing out in front of you, it's pretty hard not to, when you're in a cast in a wheelchair, not to be distracted and then start to create these scenarios in your head about what your neighbors' lives are like or what they're doing, which is exactly what Jimmy Stewart did. And then he sees something while he's being a peeping Tom, basically. He sees something that indicates to him that
it seems off.
It seems off. And then, of course, he starts putting this thing together in his head that Raymond Burr committed this murder and killed his wife, which, of course, ends up being true.
And I'll tell you, for a good bit of the movie, they try to play it up as like, is it really that he killed his wife, or is it all just something that Stewart has made up in his head because he's so bored because he can't move around?
Exactly. And again, you have Hitchcock. We never leave Jimmy Stewart's apartment in this film. Now we get to look out through the window at what's going on, but we're inside the apartment all the time. And there is, oh my gosh, the scene where, and he draws Grace Kelly into this scenario, right? And she starts believing that, hey, this guy did kill his wife. So she goes over there, if you remember, breaks into Raymond Burr's apartment when he's out and is looking for some sort of evidence. And then you can see Raymond Burr coming up the walkway, and James Stewart's freaking out because he has no way to get in touch with her to let her know that Raymond Burr is coming up into his apartment.
Yeah.
And so then he has to watch.
He's there with the landlady, and they're just watching this.
The cleaning lady. Yeah. They're watching this play out. And here's an interesting thing that I always thought was really interesting about James Stewart, right? Or his character. Raymond Burr hits the lights. He's trying to strangle or kill Grace Kelly. Jimmy Stewart's sitting there in his wheelchair watching this happen. All he had to do was yell out, but he doesn't do it. He's so afraid of getting caught that he pulls these things in the shadow.
Because even later when the police show up and it stops him from killing Grace Kelly, and the police show up and they're talking to him, and Raymond Burr looks out the window across the way to where he is, and he's like, oh my God, turn off the lights.
Yeah, because Grace Kelly is showing him the wedding ring on her on the finger that she found the wife's wedding ring in there.
Yeah.
But the fact that he could have yelled out and said, give it all away and said, stop, let her go. But he didn't do it. He could have sat there and watched her get killed, but luckily the police showed up and saved her. I thought that was a really interesting commentary on.
Well, I really love
his character.
Was it Wendell Corey in this? He is absolutely stellar as the skeptical cop that Jimmy Stewart's trying to keep bringing in on this, and he's trying to tell him,
Right.
But what you're saying doesn't make any sense. But we looked into this and it didn't pan out the way you said. What do you this is all in your head. You need to stop thinking about this.
Right.
I loved that.
Yeah, because we start, as the audience, start to doubt. We're starting to think. I mean, obviously, you're watching this movie because you know something's up, but you sit there and go, well, is he creating this whole scenario? This guy, poor Raymond Burr, did he really kill his wife? And you have all these little subplots, of the, I can't remember what he called her. The older lady that was out trying to get the younger guys at the bars, and then she would bring them home, and then they'd try to make their moves on her, and then she would, push them off and
rebuff them. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you call it? Mrs. Lonely Heart. Yeah. Miss Lonely Heart. Yeah. And then the ballerina or the dancer, the musician, all these different things that were going on that kind of kept our interest while we were waiting to find out what was going on with Raymond Burr.
He gives them all nicknames.
Yeah. And that final scene where Raymond Burr is coming to get him, and it's all dark, and all he has is his flash camera, and he uses it to kind of blind Raymond Burr as he's attacking him. But that's a really intense final scene that is really well handled. So I just,
the moral of the story is mind your own business.
Yeah, exactly. Save yourself some grief. But again, I had on two levels. I appreciate the difficulty of pulling off a movie like this without ever leaving the room with the camera. And then secondly, just the story itself is so intriguing, and how again, Hitchcock is able to create this tension and
great performances by all the cast.
Yes. And draw you into these characters.
And here's a factor too, is, if you remember in the beginning of the movie, Kelly almost is thinking about leaving Jimmy Stewart because she feels he's not willing to make enough of a commitment to her.
Right.
And by dragging her into all this is kind of how he keeps her around, is keeping her and getting her involved in this world he's creating around these people.
This is interesting. Was it his physical vulnerability that held him back? Well, I mean, it might have been, but it still was a cowardly move on his part.
Yeah.
You don't want to give away you don't want to blow the game, but at the same time, you don't want to sit there and watch your fiance get murdered before your eyes either, when you could have, yelled.
I think Mortal V is trying for a cannonball here. I bet Aaron loved the Shia LaBeouf version of this movie.
There's some movies you don't remake, and it's like, why would you take a 4-star? It's like Spielberg remaking West Side Story. Why would you do that? You can't ever make it better. All you're going to do is make it the same or worse, and more likely you're going to make it worse. So why even put yourself in that position?
Well, I've always said that about remakes. Is like, they never remake bad movies and try to make it something good. They take good movies and remake them again. It's like,
and make them bad.
It's already good. We don't need you to make it again. It's already
re-release it. Re-release it if you want, to get some money out of the theater. But so this is just one of my all-time favorites. And I will say this: there is a rumor in the Hollywood Babylon file that Grace Kelly agreed to undress while making this film for Hitchcock when he watched her from afar, like the whole Rear Window scenario where she was in her hotel room and he was in his hotel room across the way, and she undressed for him in the window while he was watching her. So my guess is that's probably true, but that is of course the rumor about Grace. And so she was, unlike Tippi Hedren, who would not work with Hitchcock in the sense that he wanted her to, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Grace Kelly seemed to be someone who was willing to work with Hitchcock.
Probably why she only did a couple of movies with him.
Yeah, exactly. She did that one, and then the one with
Marnie.
Marnie with James Bond with Sean Connery. Yeah. So anyway, there you have it, folks. There's our. Oh, wait a minute. Let's get another shot of Grace Kelly before we. Can't ever.
Is it the one Hitchcock got?
Yeah, no, not quite, but maybe just the start of what Hitchcock got. There she is.
There you go.
Once again, you've got a 20-something-year-old beautiful blonde and a 50-something-year-old swinging bachelor. Ah, the good old days, huh?
And Hitchcock loved those May December romances.
Yes, exactly. Oh, what's this? Hitch apparently also thought Grace Kelly's boobs were too small. Well, you gotta take some. You gotta be a little give and take here. So now this actually, the Christopher Reeve made-for-TV movie wasn't bad. Where he was like basically he was playing himself, a paraplegic or a quadriplegic in that wheelchair. Did you ever see that?
No, I never saw the remake.
They actually, because he had, Christopher Reeve had a breathing tube in, and they actually had the guy pull the breathing tube out to suffocate him. That's how he was going to kill him. And they actually did it so that he was okay with it. They didn't just do it to him, but he, as part of to heighten the moment in his acting, he was actually gasping for breath and dying in that scene because they did it for real, which, I guess
maybe we better take that picture off because look at Mortal V. I think we're getting a little too excited.
I'll have to save some material for no.
The next one down from him.
Oh, swing!
It's not just Jimmy's leg cast that's stiff.
Jeez. Oh man. Anyway, so there's our there's some good ones. There's some good ones you didn't mention.
Shown any of them, and you watch them, they're all great films. There's not a single like bum in the lot where you're going like, oh, that was awful. Oh man, that was a terrible movie. They're all great movies. Yeah,
Strangers on a Train's another really good one too.
Another one I just saw again watching the flick stuff, which I'd never seen before, called Without a Doubt. That's a good one.
I don't know if I've seen that.
It's one about this uncle who visits his sister's family, and the niece is like, she loves this uncle to death, but she finds out that he is possibly a Black Widow type killer where he gets involved with women and then murders them.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's called Without a Doubt. Very taut right. That's another thing. A lot of taut writing in all of Hitchcock's films. Between his direction and I guess who the writers are, very taut. I mean, there's not like any wasted lines or like the scenes that just seem to drag on interminably for no real reason. It's very taut movie making.
One of his movies that's actually fairly famous, but is one that I don't really like because I don't think it pays off, is Suspicion with Cary Grant and not Olivia de Havilland, but her sister. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Joan Fontaine, where she suspects that Cary Grant's, she's married to him and she suspects he's trying to kill her for her money. And so there's this whole, have you seen that one?
No, that's another one of the ones I haven't seen. Is Suspicion.
Well, the interesting, I shouldn't ruin the ending, but the ending does not pay off for me on that movie. And those of you who've seen it, it's basically, she suspects the whole time that Cary Grant is trying to kill her. And there's all these things that keep happening that make her believe and make you believe that's what's going on. And it turns out he's not. And it's kind of like the end. You're like, well, what?
I made you suspicious the whole time. You were
right,
wrong.
For nothing.
The end.
For nothing. Yeah, exactly. For nothing. So what's this? Peyton Holden says Northwestern removed Nebraska's breathing tube today. All right, that's it. That's it. I can only take so much.
Wow, that's even more than a cannonball.
I can only take so much. Yeah, that's right. So now Aaron is so now I'm Potsy. Spoiler alert. Yeah. Well, in fairness, if you guys haven't seen a movie that was made in 1944 or 43, shame on you. Okay. But anyway,
it obviously wasn't a priority if you haven't seen it.
Well, and again, I don't think it's it's good up until the end. It's like, I don't know. Anyway, so let's move on now to some art. And I'm kind of curious how you're going to tie this in. So
okay. Yes, it should be. So again, we all know.
Let me bring up the black and white here.
Hitchcock.
Do you want to talk first and let me show it, or
wait? Just go ahead and show it.
Okay.
So we all know Hitchcock is the master of suspense, and that's what this page is. It's all suspense. It's the final page of the issue left with a cliffhanger. This is from Ravage 2099, number 9. This is after Stan Lee has departed, and Pat Mills and Tony Mills and Pat Skinner are now the writers for the series, and they took the very fun way of doing it and saying, let's take everything Stan Lee did and just throw it all out and start all over, because the very cover has Ravage like screaming on the cover, and behind him in big letters it says, everything you know about Ravage 2099 is wrong. So they throw everything away. And this is where this is the page for the first time, all silhouetted here. He is the Beast Man. He went from being like a low rent Punisher character to a mutated guy with energy blasting hands, and now he becomes like a Beast Man in this. And but this page is like all the way they silhouette it, and it's just all that you don't really see anything, but yet you know what this is, because it's like Rebirth of the Beast right down there. You see what it all is. It's all suspense here. It's all misty. You don't see the character clearly, but yet this is the first time you're seeing the monster. It's plays very much to this kind of suspense that Hitchcock would do with something like this.
Okay. Well, see, I figured you'd find a way to tie it in.
And it's also great art by the always great Jose Delbo.
Do you want to see the color?
Yeah, let's switch over to the color, and you can see that even in color, it doesn't change very much of what you see here in the black and white.
If I can bring it up, there we go.
There it is. And again, just like with Hitchcock, you can see the color. Look at, you got him all silhouetted with bright yellow behind him. To like push that shadowy figure into your face. Like, look at this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, again, just like with Hitchcock, the use of color, the use of suspense, all of that, as they're changing everything about the character in this issue.
It's interesting.
Some people here getting murdered by what were at the time, I think, in the 2099 universe. This is like the public, they call it the public eye, and it's like kind of like the police force of the corporations that run everything. So you got the cops, murdering people, and then here's this shadowy figure, this beast that comes out of the darkness.
So they're basically like the FBI, is what you're saying.
Basically.
Mm-hmm.
Only they don't have to get affidavits that are redacted.
Now look at this. Pork Hunt says sequential treasures, and the better origin for Ravage 2099 would have been to make him related to Jonathan Raven, or Kill Raven as he is known.
Well, I think they did. No, I mean, the way they kind of played the 2099 universe is like the Age of Heroes died out, like 60, 70 years or 800 years before this. And so all the stuff of the characters that we know of that, like they did Spider-Man, the Punisher, and all them, they were more like myths now, these legendary characters of folklore. And so Ravage being descended from a character that would be of the same vein, that wouldn't work. But I could see them doing a Kill Raven style story with him. That would have been interesting.
Yeah, there was the 2099 stuff. The only thing I remember reading Ravage couple issues because
Stan started it out. He did the first 7 issues, and he did the
Paul Ryan was drawing that, wasn't he?
Paul did the first 7 issues were Paul Ryan and Stan Lee. That was them. Issue 8, Grant Meeheim took over the art, and Stan did the plot, but the script was by Skinner and Mills. And then with issue 9 here, Skinner and Mills take over the writing completely and change everything. Jose Delbo fills in, and then issue 10, Grant Meeheim returns, and it's the whole new art team and writing team together, for a full issue with the all new Ravage.
Yeah, because I remember reading Rick Leonardi was drawing Spider-Man 2099. I remember picking up a couple issues of that. And then they did the new.
That was probably the best series of the 2099 universe was Spider-Man 2099.
And they did the new universe stuff before the 2099, right?
New universe was 85, 86.
Yeah.
And then 2099 was like 92, 93.
Mortal 5 says the event that was, or is it Mortal V? The event that was initially led to the end of the Age of Heroes was in the Spider-Man 2099 crossover, but after that was averted, the date was up in the air.
So basically, they took a Terminator 3 approach. They said, you changed history in Terminator 2, but yet the end still happens this way, just at a later date. He goes, no, we stopped Judgment Day. He goes, no, you didn't. You only postponed it. Judgment Day is inevitable.
Yeah. Look at this. Mortal V is clarifying his name is V, not 5, but he says V with a D. VD? What are you trying to say, Mortal? I know that's a smiley face.
Don't get too close.
Yeah, exactly. Keep your distance, brother. Okay, well, I'm going to show you my original art, which is about as a loose a tie-in with Hitchcock as we can get, and I'll show you why. I did this, of course, it's me, but I did this Gen 13 bootleg story where I had Marlon Brando appear as kind of his character from Apocalypse Now. But that was the only art I have with a fat bald guy. And so I didn't have any Hitchcock art. So I thought, well, I'll do Brando. So there's my...
It's a fat bald guy and film related. That's close enough.
That's close enough. Well, the funny thing is, because this is like a combo Scooby-Doo Island of Dr. Moreau type story. And of course, Brando played Dr. Moreau in the Island of Dr. Moreau remake, which was just terrible. But anyway, there you go. There's my version of Brando from Apocalypse Now as Dr. Moreau. So
actually
his name is Dr. Monstro.
That cat lady looks a lot more interesting than Brando does.
Well, yeah, that's well. See, he had these animal people, right? Just like Island of Dr. Moreau. This is actually, it was called the Island of Dr. Monstro. So he's Dr. Monstro. But yeah, there was my liberal use of Brando in this story. So not quite Hitchcock, but fat bald guy. So close. So anyway. Well, we like to end the show with a nice con story. I'm assuming you've got one on the tip of your tongue waiting to share with us.
Oh yeah,
Jay.
Yes I do. And in fact, this one's special because you're going to get some extra images along with this one. So, okay, now this is circa.
Wait a minute, did I not download these?
No. This is what I'm going to share with you. So,
okay.
I have it, so you don't have to worry. So much. This is circa 2005. It was the Steve Miner show, and we went there because Rick Hoberg was there, and the wife was a huge fan of Grell's Green Arrow run, and of course Hoberg did a lot of the art on there. So we went there to see him, and she had some books for him to sign and stuff. And we were talking, and he told us a lot of stuff. He told this story about how he took a trip to Africa and on the safari and. Oh yeah, you guys need to do that. If you ever get a chance, go do it. I'm like, yeah, if I ever become like an oil sheik, I'll consider having the funds to go out and do an African safari trip, because those are so inexpensive.
Yeah, if you ever get out to Africa, you should go here.
Out there, it's, but and then we started talking about like just some great comic stuff. We started talking comics, and we got over to Frank Miller, because of course, who doesn't love Frank Miller? And he had said, yeah, I love, he told about, I loved some of his work, when he was doing his own stuff like Sin City and Ronin. And I said, oh yeah, and don't forget 300. And he's like, oh, I never read 300. And I'm like, you haven't read 300? He goes, no, I've never read that one. He goes, oh, okay. And while we're there, he did a sketch for the wife of Black Canary, which that's what I'm going to get you to share here in a second.
Okay. Get
the share button going here. There we go. He did this little sketch for her of Black Canary because that's the character she wanted because of the tie into Green Arrow. And there we go.
All righty. Very nice from Mr. Hoberg.
Yeah, there we are. That's what he did for her. And he didn't charge for it. He did it for her for free. Maybe because she was such a fan of the work. Maybe he was having a nice day. I don't know. But I took note of that when he did it, because I know that, most guys would charge you something, and he didn't. He just did this free of charge for her as, just a gratuity to a true fan. So thinking on that, I'm like, okay, so then what I'll do is I got to pay him back somehow for this. So I then ran all through the show to like virtually every comic book dealer and vendor that was there, trying to find 300, to find the issues to the 300 miniseries. And wouldn't you know it, it was, of course, the last vendor I found who had any of it. They had the first 3 issues. So I, and I think you had them at like $4 a pop, and I pulled out a 10. I'm like, would you go 10 for 3 for 10? And the guy's like, all right. And he took the money, because of course he takes the money. And I went back over and I told her, I said, I really appreciate you that you did the sketch for my wife for free. And he's like, oh, that's no problem. I said, for my own karma, I got to give you some. So I reached in my bag and I said, here you go. I said, you never read 300. Here's the first 3 issues so you can check it out. And he was just blown away. He's like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, totally. And I'll tell you, as I walked away after, I thanked him again. And I walked away. I looked back and he immediately opened it up and started looking through 300 right then and there. And so it was just, it's a little fun thing there. See, because like I said, for me, it was a case of like, I liked that he did that for my wife. And so I wanted to give him a little something, and so that's just a little fun story there of a time when I was being generous, which is a very rare happenstance.
Well, I've got a story that didn't end quite so well. None of my con stories ever seem to, it's not, I don't have those stories where.
You don't have the stories like Gary Martin where he leaves him crying in tears of joy?
No, that never happens with me. But I have told this story before, but I feel like I've told every one of my con stories at some point. But this is worth, since you brought up this Seattle show, I was sitting next to Bernie Wrightson. And we were even getting to a point where, this wasn't the first time I'd met Wrightson, because I'd met him at the Portland show before and had actually gone out to dinner with him. And so we were sitting there, and he actually, and maybe it was just because I had a banner behind me that had my name on it, that he would say, oh, look, I get to sit next to Aaron Lopresti. He was joking around with me and stuff, like he knew who I was. So that was really this great feeling, right? So I thought, I'm finally getting in good with Wrightson. Well, some guy asked him to draw a sketch, and he was like, okay. He goes, whatever you want. So he starts drawing it, and it looked like a bat at first. And I was looking at it from the side, upside down and from the side, sort of. And it took me just a second, but I knew what it was. And I just blurted out, oh my gosh, that's Karloff as Frankenstein. And he had just got the brow done, right? And the shadow around the eyes. And he looked at me like, if looks could kill. He was just like, I ruined the surprise. And I felt so horrible because I just blurted out. You know what I mean? I didn't think about. And so that might have been. And so he wasn't too friendly with me the rest of the show. And maybe that's why he purposely forgot me all the rest of the years of my life. But so once again, another story of me pissing somebody off. But I didn't mean to. I just did, I was so exuberant as a fan. I was like, oh, that's right. That's Frankenstein. He's like, and I was like, oh, no.
And then he sounded like Frankenstein.
Yes, exactly. And he stood up and kind of reached for my throat. And
everyone here's nailing it for it. 40% Zed. Aaron the bully.
Yep.
JW, Aaron picking fights again.
It's just, with me, it's like, I gotta think before I open my mouth, and that's always the danger with me.
It's a gift, Aaron. It's a gift to be able to just start trouble wherever you go.
I know. It's piss off people that you admire, without even trying. It's just, it's an incredible thing, really.
You tick off the people you admire, and you yell at the people who pay you commissions, and and you have a career somehow. That's amazing.
For all the 20 times that I do something nice, it's the one time I'm a jerk that always gets remembered. And of course, I keep telling the story, so it's my own fault. I'm perpetuating the myth.
My father, God rest his soul, he always told me this. He told me a little, proverb about that. He goes, son, told me a story about a soldier who for 100 days would lead the charge in the battle. He'd be right there at the front of the line, carrying the banner, get the gun out. He was the first one out there and he goes, but on the 101st day, he got scared and he ran. He goes, now what do you think people remembered him for? What's the 100 days of leading the charge? No, it was the one day when he got scared and ran. That's what he's remembered for.
Yep, that's me. 40% Zed says, did you also tell his kids Santa wasn't real? Why have none of Aaron's friends paid for a Dale Carnegie course? Oh, that's isn't that how to influence
how to influence people?
Yeah, how to make friends and influence people. Yeah, I've got a real problem with that apparently.
Well, evidently, folks, Aaron has read the Don Rickles book on how to do that.
That's exactly right. If you know me long enough, eventually I'm going to say something and go, oops, that came out wrong. Oh my goodness. But what are you going to do? We go on and hope that the next con is better. It's like I'm just going to quit talking to people. That way I won't say anything stupid. I'll just say thank you.
Isn't that why Shelly is supposed to be there? Isn't that her job?
That's right. She gets in more trouble than I do on social media. So, but see, when you're on social media, I have time to think about it. So I always pull back before I type in that thing that I'm going to regret. But when you're talking to someone, it just comes out and you're like, wow, I sure wish I hadn't said that.
The opposite. She'll type it out and then post it and then make people get mad. But yeah, she'll say it, blurt it out in real life and no one gets mad. Like that chick you said that she said, that she was like she posed for Playboy or something. It's like, yeah, my daughter doesn't respect me. Oh, gee, I wonder why. And it just, it just blurts that out. It's like, but no one got angry at her for it.
I tell you, Ron Friends, I'm sure it was Ron Friends. We were sitting across the table, and when Shelly said that, we just looked at each other and went, did she just say that? And the model kind of did
no one got mad. There was no cat fights. No darn.
Well, the model, she kind of did a double take, like, and then was like, kind of laughed it off and went, because I thought maybe Shelly was being funny or something. But
yeah,
wow, I was like, what?
She got the benefit of the doubt. It was just a joke. Where you do something, it's like, oh, they automatically think it's got to be the worst thing possible for Aaron to say it.
Yeah, exactly. So Shelly gets away with it. Oh my goodness. Well,
congratulations, Danky Frankie. Congratulations. That's quite an accomplishment.
I escaped Twitter. No regrets. Yeah, I don't have any. What do you mean? Am I growing out my hair? It's just reflection. I just buzzed this. Oh my.
Past Master Dan.
I just woke up from my nap and you're still here. Wow, you guys like Hitchcock. Well, we do.
Well, who doesn't? I mean, he's the master of, come on. Right.
He's the master of suspense. You're the master of pretense.
There you go.
Well, we've done it again. We've completed another, what I think, a very interesting show with a few laughs and some good insights and the whole 9 yards. What
do you have? A lot of great movies for people to go check out. So if you haven't seen any of these ones we talked about, folks, go check them out because they're all good.
Yep. Now, do you have any tidbits for our next show? Only a month away.
Yes. Next show is September 24th, guys. Mark it on your calendar. It's going to be, now I was thinking about what I was going to do and I had a couple of ideas, but the untimely passing of the great Tom Palmer has made the decision for me. Aaron and I are going to talk about our favorite inkers.
Oh, I've got about two. No, I'm kidding. See, that's the kind of things I say, and then everybody's mad at me.
Two, and he's one of them.
That's right. I'm both of them. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
We'll talk about our favorite inkers, showing you some sweet art, and maybe I'll even try to see if I can dig out a piece of one of those inkers so I can have it for our show here. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I've got some people that inked me. So isn't Hitchcock the guy who signed the Declaration of Independence? Wah wah wah.
No, that's the character Will Smith played in that 2008 movie.
That's right. Good old Hancock, of course. Porkhunt says no, that was Art to Bear. So
Art was forging the name. He didn't want them to be associated, so he wrote that name. That's the name he wrote. Okay.
Exactly. He didn't want it to come back to haunt him or anything. In today's
That's right.
today's culture, if you were caught signing the Declaration of Independence, you would be vilified. So,
or you know what it is? He was joking around. He said, "Hey, put your John Hancock on there," and so that's what he wrote on there, John Hancock.
That's my name, but
well, you said put John Hancock.
Exactly. All right, so we'll be doing our favorite inkers in a month, and that should be an interesting show. I'll try and be very
special announcement on the next
oh, that's right.
Comic Convo. Aaron knows what it's about because we've talked about it, but you guys don't. But you guys will find out next month, and I really think you're going to like it. So
yes. So there you have it. Another successful, or at least a show that we've completed, and we thank all of you for taking the time to join us. Because if you weren't there, we wouldn't be here. And let me remind you,
I'm sure the master, wherever he is, he appreciates you being here too, to revel in the greatness that was his life's work. That's
right. And don't forget, if you have not signed up for Wraith of God 2, Blood Hunters, which is the pre-launch page is up right now on Indiegogo, and there's a link in the description of this video, as well as links to all of James' things, which he'll now give you a description of.
Group, the art gallery, and of course my YouTube channel here on YouTube. So all that's all down there below to check out. And so next time, Comic Book Inkers. And until then,
that's right. Enjoy your weekend and the rest of your week. And thanks for joining us. And we will see you next time. Good night, everybody.